What's up, guys and gals? Jay here from Front Yard Fantasy, and I'm here to tell you the two running backs that are my personal must drafts, getting them every draft possible. And when I bring up the names, you might be wondering why I'm talking about two players who are constantly going at the beginning of drafts, the first couple of rounds. Well, honestly, these two running backs are guys that I don't feel like are getting enough love for consideration for top five and potentially even the RB1 in all of fantasy. I think people are sleeping on their ceilings a little bit. But that's what I'm here for, to help you out. And let's go ahead and jump right into it. The first guy I want to talk about is DeAndre Swift. Now, last season through week 11, he was the running back 5 in PPR leagues and finished the season as the running back 10 on a points per game basis. Now, the knock on Swift has been that he hasn't necessarily had the rushing production that you would like to see out of an elite level running back. Last year, through 13 games, he averaged only 48 rushing yards per game. He's yet to eclipse 700 yards in his first two seasons in the NFL, but he's got the receiving production to make up for it. Last year, he had 78 targets, 62 receptions, 452 receiving yards in just 13 games. And even though it was only 13 games, he had the fourth most receptions and the fifth most reception yards for all running backs in the entire NFL. He had a target share of 13.9, which was the fourth highest for all running backs in the entire NFL. The Detroit Lions, say what you want about the team, but they have one of the best offensive lines in the entire NFL with Penei Sewell, Frank Ragnow. They are currently ranked, according to Pro Football Focus, as the number 3 offensive line in the NFL. Now, he is, in my opinion, one of a handful of running backs that I could see finishing as the RB1 overall. You do have to be concerned with a few things, his health. He's missed 8 games over the first 2 seasons. And the offense that he plays on, it's Detroit last year was 25th in scoring, 22 in total yards, and Jared Goff is their quarterback. So, they did go out and make some moves. They signed Jay Chark, drafted Jameson Williams. So targets could potentially be affected, but that's where DeAndre Swift shines. And I fully expect them to continue to use him at an elite level. Well, I love Jamal Williams. I love the person that Jamal Williams is. He's been phenomenal on Hard Knocks. Guy has a lot of heart. I don't see him as a threat to really take any work away from DeAndre Swift in the passing game. He could spell him on the ground, but that's not where DeAndre Swift makes his money. If he does get more production on the ground, which he's fully capable of, he did it in college, Swift has an elite level of involvement in the passing game, even if he doesn't have the rushing production. Now, he had got it done in college on the ground. He could do it in the NFL. If he does take that next step with his rushing production, plus that elite level of involvement in the passing game, the sky's the limit. He can finish as the RB1. This is an improving offense. He's going at, I haven't really seen him much in the first round, but the beginning of the second, middle of the second, I've even seen him fall to the third in some places. He's a perfect target if you're starting wide receiver in the first round. If you're going with a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson on the comeback around, you get DeAndre Swift as your RB1. You are sitting pretty, and a guy who's undervalued in my opinion. Next guy I want to talk about is Joe Mixon. And it's kind of the other side of the coin. While he's got the rushing production, there's been a lot of talk that he's not an elite option or somebody who could finish as the RB1 because of his lack of involvement in the passing game. Now, I think that's a mistake. He's finished the past 2 seasons as an RB1, RB7 last year, RB11 in 2020. And while he's not an elite level pass catcher, he's got a lot of other things going for him that keeps him at that high level. Joe Mixon has bell cow usage in a league that, for the most part, doesn't have that many bell cows anymore. He had close to 300 rushes last year. He'll be right around the same range this year. He could easily surpass that 300 threshold. He had the third most rushing attempts in the entire NFL, third most rushing yards with 1,205. He had a 64% snap share. The closest on the Bengals last year was Samaje Perine with a 25% snap share for running backs. 64% snap share was the 6th highest in the entire NFL, higher than Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, just to name a few. He's got the red zone usage. He's got those high-value touches. He is the guy for the Bengals in the red zone. He had 43 attempts, 12 touchdowns, 12 rushing touchdowns in the red zone, chipped in 2 receiving touchdowns in the red zone. He's the guy there. He does chip in some work in the passing game now. It's not at the level of a DeAndre Swift or an Alvin Kamara, but he had 48 targets, 42 catches, over 300 receiving yards, and he caught 3 touchdowns. Bengals offensive line is much improved. It's currently ranked number 8 according to Pro Football Focus. They went out and made some big signings, Lyle Collins, Alex Kappa, just to name a few. This is an elite offense. Mixon's got the recipe for success for a high floor and a high ceiling. Good offensive line, bell cow carries, elite offense. And like I said earlier, while it's not a Kamara or Swift level of involvement in the passing game, he does have some extra that chips in, and those points count. I'm targeting both of these guys as much as possible. Mixon, you're going to have to go a little earlier, end of the first round, beginning of the second round. Like I said, I've even seen DeAndre Swift fall to the third in some places. There aren't the guys back in when I started playing fantasy in the late 90s, early 2000s, where you have nothing but running backs for the first 2 to 3 rounds. It just doesn't happen anymore. But the positives for both of these players outweigh the negatives. Both have top 5 potential. Like I said, both, in my opinion, have the RB1 overall potential. Don't leave drafts without them. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the channel below. Make sure you give the video a like. Any questions, drop them in the comments, and I'm happy to help you out. Draft season is upon us, and the NFL season's almost here.